Well, Cody, stop. Not again. That little chuckle was a little bit too much.
I had to really sell it.
Do you know what channel the debate's on? Is it CNN or CBS?
Bro, I have no idea. I was gonna watch it through you streaming it on Discord or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm planning on doing. The show that was on leading up to the debate is called The American Experience.
You owe me 10 grand. Who's this fella calling the shots? Someone was dead. You can sort it.
Nice.
No, I'm scared. It's all my mate.
Alright, there you go, big dog. Bing, 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 bing.
This is the PBS app.
Hey Google, turn on the stream light.
Episodes of your favorites. Stream anytime.
Behold my
anywhere,
power,
with the
viewers.
free PBS app.
On American
Are you
Experience,
excited to see
an actor who
are you
once
excited to
played the
see
hero.
how the Republicans try to say that PBS is biased?
Yeah, it should be pretty funny. I'm a little worried because like
A
JD Vance
president who wanted to
is comically
rescue
enough,
America.
but
Yeah, but people don't care about facts.
Reagan
my
on American
my kind of concern here is that Tim Walz is a self-admitted terrible debater.
Thursday at 9.
Dude, it doesn't matter if he self-admits it. There's no way he loses this debate. Literally a 0% chance. You would have to lose on purpose to lose a debate to JD Vance.
Moment, and it won't be the last.
The lionesses, you have to be very careful here.
What we've learned
It'll depend a
about
lot
other
on how much
other
the
planets
moderators
has
like
rewritten what was possible.
properly fact check the nonsense that JD Vance is gonna say.
Well, you have to pull up third-party fact checkers for that kind of stuff. Which I'm going to do right now, as a matter of fact.
This PBS News presentation is
JD
made
Vance is
possible
gonna
by
say the most
Consumer Cellular,
mentally ill
by the
shit
Corporation
humanly
for Public
possible.
Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS.
He's
station
pretty good
probably-
about that.
from viewers
He'll
like you.
probably start with
Thank you.
like the
Let's see.
illegal Haitians are eating your pets.
All right, I'm going with PolitiFact, one of my favorite fact checkers.
And welcome to PBS News special live coverage of the CBS News
Here we
Vice
go.
presidential debate. I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff.
This is the
Republican
American
Senator J.D.
political
Vance,
equivalent
and Democratic
of the
Governor Tim
AFC
Walz
Championship
in
game.
New York City for their first and only debate. They've traded personal and political attacks on the campaign trail, and tonight voters can compare the Trump and Harris
Oh,
campaigns
Jesus.
head to head on critical issues from the economy to immigration.
As you know,
I am
early
slightly
voting has already
worried,
started
if
in
I'm being
several
totally
states,
honest
so
with
this
you,
is a
but I'm
critical
only
night
slightly
for
worried
both
that JD Vance
campaigns.
is just going to
Take you live now
scream
to the
unhinged
debate as
shit
it begins
show
right
so
now.
loud nobody can hear Tim Walz talk.
Yeah,
Good
that would
evening,
be my
I'm Nora
concern too.
O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News
The mods,
Vice
like the
Presidential
moderators,
debate.
have to
We
keep
wanna
Just so you
welcome
guys know,
viewers on
just a
CBS,
quick
on
for the
other
audience,
networks here in the
little
US
little
and around
blurb
the
here.
world.
It
We have a
says that it's
controversial
hosted by
night ahead,
CBS,
but
which
this
is the
the
case,
issues that matter
but it
to you,
is
the
a
voter.
PBS
Let's introduce the
special,
candidates.
which is about as
Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim
unbiased
Walz
as
and
you can
Ohio's Republican
possibly
Senator
get.
JD Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
Here's something interesting, in case you didn't know. They did a there was some research I was reading on media literacy, and they examined which news sources viewers were the best at knowing current events both domestically and internationally, and they found that every major news network was fucking horrible except for PBS. And as a matter of fact, viewers of MSNBC and Fox News answered less questions correctly than people who do not consume any news at all.
Candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
So,
CBS News reserves
that
the
being
right to
said,
mute
this
the
is about as
candidates and
unbiased
to
as
maintain
possible.
They just said
decorum.
something about
We have
allowing
not
fact
shared the
checking.
questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set.
Yeah, they're going to mute the
Governor,
microphones, is
Senator,
pretty much what they
thank you
said.
for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight.
You're just in time, baby.
Let's keep in mind where this started.
Everybody's
October
father
7th,
is talking
Hamas
right now.
terrorists, massacred over 1,400 Israelis.
Do you want me to turn it a little for you?
Oh, fucking October 7th. October
Israel's
7th.
ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them,
This is great.
Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces. And
Man, he does a masterful job of looking right into the camera.
Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance.
Everybody knows who you are,
of her
Vance.
life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life.
If that's the case, then why are you against food access programs?
And served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams.
Is it possible
and
he's making it up?
I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream
Just so
is
you know,
unattainable.
Iran launched a ballistic missile attack against Israel today that failed because of American defenses stopping missiles.
The American dream is going to be attainable once again.
That's
Now, to
about
answer
the
this particular
question's about.
question, we have to
He's not
remember
answering the
that as
question.
much as Governor
This is an
Walz just
idiot.
accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has
Dumbest
received
thing I've
over
ever heard.
$100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people
Iran's
to
gonna
fear the
launch
United
attacks
States, you
against the
needed
US,
peace
bro.
through strength.
You're right.
They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in
That'd be the
world.
last thing
You
that
asked
that
about a
government
preemptive
ever
strike,
decided to
Margaret, and I
do.
want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel
You
what
said that
they
twice
think they
now.
need to do to keep their country safe. And
Yeah.
we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
He didn't answer the question.
Governor Walz, do you care to respond?
He
to
said,
any of
I
these
don't know.
allegations?
Israel should
Donald
decide.
Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So
Yeah, that
Iran
was the
is
Iran
closer to a
nuclear deal.
weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will
Bro,
go
this guy
to
needs to run
whoever
for
has the most
president.
flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed
I'd
in
vote for
April.
that dude.
Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal.
Oh, shit.
He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible.
Oh my
Did he
fucking
make a
god.
mistake? You have
I
1
hate
minute.
that guy.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more
He literally
secure.
backed
Now, we
out of the
talk about
nuclear deal.
The sequence of events that led us to where we are
That
right
took
now,
like 8
and you
years
can't
to
ignore
craft.
October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris.
He's not
So
even answering the
Governor Walz can
question.
criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact
I like
of
her
climate
hair.
change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their
unironically
job.
saying
And I
JD Vance
commit
is like
that when
doing better
Donald
than
Trump is
Walls right
president
now.
again, the government will put the citizens
Well, I
of this
mean, isn't
country
he
first
like
when they suffer
borderline
from
a
a disaster.
conservative plant
Nora,
at
you
this
asked about
point?
climate
He's
change.
just a
I think
tanky
this
freak.
is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather
Yeah,
patterns.
sounds
I
like
think
a
it's important
psyop
for
to
us,
me.
first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's
not true.
policies actually
Yes, it
led
is.
to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing
Well,
overseas.
if you play
more
with the
doing
numbers, it's
business in
true.
some
It
of the
depends on
dirtiest
what you're
parts of
talking
the
about.
entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is
You're
to
going to
double
bed?
down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala
Okay, have
Harris
fun,
has done
baby.
exactly the opposite.
Not too much, though. You can put this on the
Governor
TV
Walz, you have 2
downstairs.
minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening.
Have fun,
Look,
baby.
first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes
Honestly,
out to the
this
folks that
debate
are
is
down
just
there,
better.
in contact with the governors. I serve as
No idea,
co-chair of
baby,
the
but it was
Council of
after
Governors. As
5.
we work together on these emergency management.
Probably like
Governors
5:30
know
or
no
6.
partisanship. They work together to solve the governors and the emergency responders
In
on the
an
ground.
hour.
Those happen on the front end.
Baby,
The
you'll
federal
be
government
fine. You
comes
can
in, makes
take
sure
the
we're there
nighttime
so that
one.
we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation
Why is
Reduction
this
Act.
such a better
That's created
debate than the
jobs all
Kamala
across the country.
Donald Trump
2,000
one?
in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America.
Is
sits in
Donald Trump
Minnesota.
such a
But
freak
my
that he
farmers
can't
know
even
climate
have a
change is real.
conversation as well
They've
as
seen
JD
500-year
Vance?
droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future.
Yeah, Tim
not
Walz
just
is
the current.
bashful. This
And
dude's
that's
a
what
great debater.
absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking
That was
about
just
how do we
crazy.
mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing
So I
is
got a
more
quick fact check
manufacturing and
here.
more energy production in the United States of
In
America,
a
and that's not what
2020
they're doing.
speech at
So
Ohio State
clearly,
University,
Kamala Harris
JD Vance
herself
actually
doesn't believe her own
said
rhetoric on
publicly,
this. If
we
she
have
did,
a
she would
climate
actually
change
agree with Donald
problem
Trump's
in
energy
our
policies. Now,
society.
something
Yeah.
Walz said, I think is
And did
important
not
to touch
change his
upon, because
opinion until
when
in
we talk about clean
2022
energy, I think that's a
when
slogan that often
he
the
said that he was
Democrats will use
skeptical of
here.
the idea
I'm
that
talking, of course,
climate
about the
change is
Democratic
caused
leadership. The
purely
real issue
by
is that
man.
if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China,
Interesting.
number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States.
And the
of
League of
America.
Conservation
Some of them
voters
are,
gave
but a
JD
lot of
Vance
them are
a
being made
0
overseas in
on
China,
its
especially the
2023
components
scorecard
that
based
go
on
into
his
those
Senate
solar panels.
votes.
So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing.
I mean, I do
Time
agree
is
with him.
up.
We need more
Governor,
nuclear
would you like
energy.
to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus
Dude, he's
among
dunking
scientists
on
is that
him.
the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the
Oh,
U.S.-Mexico
no.
border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your
It shouldn't.
campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and
Ooh, this is a
separate
good
them
question.
from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations.
Something about his
decriminalizing
eyes is
illegal
really
aliens,
making me
massively
uncomfortable.
increasing the
He looks
asylum
like a
fraud that
robot.
exists in our system. That is
No,
simply
it's
putting
not
the
that.
floodgates. And what
It's
it's
like,
meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled
it's
with
like the
opioid
Ted
addiction
Bundy
and has
look.
gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding.
I mean, the
You've got to
thing is,
re-implement Donald
Kamala
Trump's
Harris as
border
vice
policies,
president
build
has
the wall,
literally zero
re-implement
control of the
deportations,
border
and that
at
gets
all.
me to
Like,
your
she
point,
literally
Margaret,
can't
about
do
what we
anything.
actually do. So we've got 20
She can't do
25 million
executive
illegal
orders.
aliens
She
who are here in
can't
the
command the
country. What
military.
we
She
do with them, I
can't
think the
command
first
the
thing that we can
National
do is we
Guard. Like,
start
she
with the
can do
criminal migrants.
literally
About 1
nothing.
million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a
No,
good
it won't.
day's
It'd be
work.
terrible for
And
the
final point,
economy.
Margaret, is you
Those
asked about
illegal
family
aliens
separation.
literally
Right
work
now,
jobs
in
that
this
other
country,
people would
Margaret,
never
we have
work.
320,000
Yeah, I know.
children.
We have
The only
entire
reason that the
Department of Homeland
agriculture in
Security
certain
has
places
effectively
are
lost. Some of them have been
is
sex
functioning.
trafficked, some
And
of them
hey,
peacefully
Ace, how's
left
it
homes with
going?
their families,
Well,
and some of them
yes,
have
the
been used as
sick
drug
anime
trafficking
tag.
mules. The
That's what I like to
real
hear.
family separation policy in this country
So I'm
is
guessing you're into
unfortunately
anime then,
Kamala
champ.
Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do
What
this.
is your
real leadership would be
favorite?
saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's
And it
border
better be
policies.
good.
I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in
Yeah, give me a top
fentanyl
5. That's more
and
fair.
using
Thank
kids
God.
as
All right,
drug
a
mules,
reasonable
among
person.
Other things regarding children.
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this.
I got another
and
fact
that
check.
is the United States
So
Congress.
JD Vance
That's
claimed
the
that
Border
Harris
Control
let
Agency.
in
That's the Chamber of
20 to
Commerce. That's
25
the most
million
Americans out here.
undocumented
That's why we have
immigrants.
the fairest and
This
the
is not
toughest
true.
bill.
Apparently,
And
11.6 million is the absolute highest that have been let in for the entire Biden administration.
But he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation.
Oh yeah, he's bringing up the bill that the Republicans shot down out of spite.
And the Chamber of Commerce and the
What, the Florida one?
No, the immigration bill.
Get there.
Oh, yeah. One Piece, 1997 Berserk. Oh, boy. Perfect Blue. I actually never saw Perfect Blue or My Senikoku. I never watched Lupin the 30 either. You're into the old school stuff. God, Oshinbo. Chibi Maruka-chan. God damn, bro. You're into old stuff. Me too. Yeah, no, old is good. I call it crunchy. Is how I refer to it. I'm a big Tatami Galaxy guy. I like Welcome to the NHK. I'm a big JoJo's guy.
Mexico will pay for it.
I like Jujutsu Kaisen.
But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator.
Did I say Clan Out After Story already?
People,
I think I
telling
did.
him what he was going to do. As far as the deportation
I do like 1997 Berserk a lot too, but I don't know if it's top 5 for me.
So that's why pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up.
God
Senator,
damn.
the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Oh, she's holding to the fire.
Is that we already have massive child separations thanks to
I don't know. There's a lot that I like.
Accused Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country, and we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop.
Take the long hair and receding hairline. All right, you don't gotta come at me like that.
Kamala Harris went out bragging that
Jesus.
she was going to undo Donald Trump's
Thanks though,
policy.
homie.
She did
I'm
exactly
never gonna
that.
stop
We had
growing
a
it.
record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country, and now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she
No,
said
I
that
got
somehow
you. It's
she
cool.
got
I wasn't
religion and cared
insulted.
a lot about a piece of
Bro, if I
legislation.
got
The
insulted
only
over people
thing
saying
that
shit
she
like
did when
that,
she became
I
the
couldn't
vice
be on
president,
the
when she
internet.
became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This
That didn't
problem
happen
is
because
leading
she
to
can't do that.
massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care.
She quite literally cannot do anything about executive actions. And thank you for the follow. I appreciate you, Ace. Welcome to the big top. You're officially a clown.
Polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this.
Yes, Hong Kong.
Talking about and saying, I will create
Man, I'm
stories
trying to think of
bring
other
attention to
anime
this."
that I...
That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
We have a fact check. Just came in.
It's not true.
Harris was never put in charge of border enforcement.
Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue.
In March
to make it an issue.
2021, President Joe Biden assigned Harris to work alongside officials in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras to address the issues driving people to leave those countries and come to the United States. These issues include economic insecurity, corruption, human rights, and violence. Border security and management is the Homeland Security Secretary's responsibility. So,
Governor, your time
fact
is up.
check.
Senator, I'll give you
She
1
had
minute, but
fucking
if I
nothing to
just
do with it. What's your favorite part of JoJo? It's gotta be
The
Stone
governor
Ocean.
has made the point,
Has to
and I
be.
think
I
as a state
hated the first
lawmaker,
half
you
of
know
Stone
that
Ocean,
Congress controls
but the
purse
second
strings
half
and
of Stone
funding.
Ocean,
So you have said
legendary.
repeatedly that Donald Trump would,
I also
through
like Vento
executive
Oreo.
action, solve this. Do you disagree?
I have to
that
say,
Congress controls the
not a
purse
big
strings
fan of
and we
Part
need to
4.
support
I'm not into Diamonds Are Unbreakable. Not really my favorite.
Margaret, first of all, the gross
I
and
think
boring
Diamonds Are
part of the southern
Unbreakable
border
is my
just
least
empowering
favorite
law
part.
enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the border patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their
I
job.
haven't gotten that far yet. I'm still reading the manga. I'm like a quarter of the way through part 7.
Law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally,
I was talking about
stay in
just the
Mexico,
anime
you've got to go back
adaptation
through proper
stuff.
channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried
Uh-oh.
about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, In Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed.
Brother,
You've
you
got
admitted to
housing that is
making up
totally
the story
unaffordable
in Springfield
we brought
because,
in millions of
and
illegal
I quote,
immigrants to compete
well,
with
at least people
Americans
now think
for
about it.
scarce homes. The people that I'm most
Well,
worried about
no,
in
here's
Springfield,
I
Ohio,
actually
are
have the fact check
American
right here.
citizens
He
who
said
have had their
the
lives
American media
destroyed by
totally
Kamala
ignored
Harris's
this
open
stuff
border.
until Donald
It is
Trump
a
and I started
disgrace, Tim,
talking about
and I
cat
actually
memes.
think, I agree
If
with you.
I have to
think you wanna
create
solve this problem,
stories
but I
so
don't
that the
think
American
Kamala
media
Harris is.
actually pays
Senator, your
attention
time
to
is
the
up.
suffering
Governor,
of
you
the
have 1
American
minute to
people,
respond.
then that's what I'm going to do.
is law
I say that we're
enforcement as
creating
for
a
the
story, meaning
They
we're
helped
creating
craft
the
it.
American
They're the ones
media
that supported
focusing on it.
That's because they know we
So
need
he
to
literally
do
said he
this.
made it
Look,
up.
this
Yeah.
issue of continuing to bring this up,
But I'll
of
just
not dealing
chill.
with it,
No, I got you. You don't
blaming
have to.
migrants
Don't
for
worry.
everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street
I'm just
speculators
reading the
buying
live
housing,
fact
making
check
them
as
less
we go.
affordable. But it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill
You watch
does
One
it.
Piece?
It's funded.
I tried,
it's
bro.
supported by the people who
I
do it,
watched a
and it lets
little
us
bit when
keep
I
our
was a
dignity
kid.
about how we
I
treat
just
other people.
can't get through it,
Thank
man.
you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield,
I just don't
Ohio
have
does
the
have a
time
large number
to
of
invest in
Haitian
getting to the
migrants
parts that
who
are
have
actually
legal
worth
status
watching.
to
However, I
be
will
protected.
say the Netflix adaptation,
Senator, we have so much to get to.
legendary.
Margaret,
I
think it's
loved
important
the
because-
Netflix
the
adaptation in
economy.
live
Margaret,
action.
The rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy-
going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on.
Oh, he's
So
mad.
there's an application
He's
Yeah,
big
no
mad.
kidding.
CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in applying.
She
for
literally
green
has
card,
no
waiting for
control.
10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal
And
process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so
Harris
much
has
to get
opened
to,
up that
Senator.
pathway.
What did he
We have
say?
so
Been on
much.
the books
Said-
since
She said
1990.
thank you, Senator,
you,
for
gentlemen.
describing the legal
No,
process.
hit Tim Walls. What did he say?
Oh, I didn't hear him.
Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
He's
Gentlemen,
still going.
The audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank you, Margaret.
Dude, she didn't put up with any of his shit.
Holy fuck, she like,
Each of your
he's so
campaigns
big.
has released an economic plan.
Oh,
So let's talk
we're
about
about
the
to get a
specifics.
fact check
Governor
update.
Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing,
My
and
God.
renewed child tax credit.
I love it when they
Wharton
cut the
School
mics.
Says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit.
Just get
by
fucking
$1.2
dunked on, kiddo.
trillion.
Trying to
How
think of
would
my
you pay
other
for that
favorite
without
animes.
ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight,
I
you're
like
hearing a lot of
Aki
stuff
Khan.
back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact
Oh,
me?
no.
The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded
Tokusatsu.
somewhere.
I don't know
It's
what that
foundational
is.
to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs
Lunchtime?
or other things,
Is that what that
there's
means?
fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen
Oh,
it in Minnesota.
that's what you mean.
12% more
I
houses in
love
Minneapolis,
Kamen
down
Rider.
on rent 4%. It's
I
working.
never watched
And then
Ultraman,
making sure
but
tax
Kamen
cuts
Rider,
go
I
to
like
middle class.
Gaim.
$6,000 child
Gaim
tax
is
credit
my
in Minnesota
favorite one.
Reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for
The
families.
Ryan!
Business off the ground.
That
The
shit
law
was
as it stands right
fucking
now is $5,000
hilarious.
tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago. He said, "You're rich as hell. I'm gonna give you a tax cut." He gave the tax cuts that
So,
only went to the top class.
I know that one of the newer ones, there's like vampires or demons or some shit. My assistant is really big into Kamen Rider at work, and he was telling me about it, and I am super interested in it.
Businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris.
Oh, we got a fact check. Vance said hospitals are overwhelmed. Local officials disagree. We asked health officials ahead of the debate what they thought about Vance's claims about Springfield's emergency rooms being overwhelmed. This claim is not accurate, said Chris Cook, health commissioner for Springfield's Clark County. Comparison data from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services tracks how many patients are left without being seen as part of its efforts to characterize whether emergency departments are able to handle their patient loads. Essentially, the fact check is he's full of shit. Only 3% of Springfield's hospital patients leave without being seen from emergency rooms.
Is that Kamala Harris has already done it because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies.
No, she doesn't. She's vice president.
Is drive the cost of food higher by 25%.
What is he talking about, bro?
The cost of housing higher by about
All of his
60%.
arguments just bank on people listening not knowing how the fuck the government works.
For a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has
And honestly, that's a pretty good bet.
For how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan.
Well, I mean, I already know that she can't. She's vice president.
I'm asking for Walls or one of the moderators to call that out.
Nah, they're not going to do that.
And they don't have wisdom because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest
Welcome back, Ace.
take-home pay
You're done with your
generation in
ads,
this
I'm
country,
hoping.
1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably
He didn't do
admits
shit.
that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans.
That's just a blatant lie.
2017, and you saw an American economic.
Oh, we're getting a fact check.
Seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery,
he said pro
listen to the people
tip
at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? And the last year as president. That's what's
It's true
wrong with the
according to
system.
federal tax
There's a way
returns.
around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China,
Oh, I got a
we'd get
fact
cheaper
check.
goods. They lied
No
about that.
evidence
They
that
said
billions
we'd
of dollars have
ship our
reached
industrial base
Iran.
off to other
Vance said
countries
Iran
to
has
Mexico and
received
elsewhere.
over 100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. There is no evidence that any of the 6 billion from the hostage release agreement with Iran has made its way to Iran. Also, it is the Biden administration, not the Kamala Harris administration.
Wisdom and the courage to say to that
These are getting kind of sassy. What did you about to say about Kamen Rider? I said my assistant was telling me about the newest one and how there's like vampires or demons or some shit in it, and that one sounds real good.
And I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate
Oh,
us.
I got an
This
addition to
has
that fact
to
check
stop,
about
and
the
we're not
the
gonna
unfrozen
stop it by
assets from
listening to
Iran.
experts.
The
We're
money
gonna stop it
consisted
by
of
listening to
Iranian
common
oil
sense and
revenue
wisdom,
frozen
which is
since
what Donald Trump governed
2019
us.
Senator, you're
when
up against the
Trump
polls. Can you address that?
imposed
I
a
mean, voters
ban
say
of
they trust
Iranian
Donald
oil
Trump on the
exports,
economy
sports,
more. Why?
and
There's
sanctions
nothing
on
to
its
deny it.
banking
You had
sector.
billionaires get tax cuts. You heard what the numbers were. Look,
So Trump
I'm
did
a
it.
union guy on this.
Also,
I'm not the guy
assistant.
who
Yeah,
manages
at work,
things
I'm a
overseas,
director of
but I
human
understand that,
resources
look,
at my
we
company. I
produce
have
soybeans and corn.
I have
We
an
need to have
assistant.
fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this.
I do like to
watched it
think I'm
happen
pretty
too. I
dope,
watched it in my
Ace.
communities.
That
And we
is
talked about
something I
that.
like to say about
We
myself.
had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over. And we saw
Well, no, it
people,
ain't like that. I'm pretty
folks that-
chill with them.
folks that are venture capital
Don't
in some
worry.
cases, putting
No
money into companies
overtime
that
at
were
all.
overseas. We're
Even
in
a little
agreement
bit,
that we bring
ever,
those
no
home.
matter
The
what.
issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed
Oh,
up, he
they're
said, well,
typing up
Donald
another
Trump
fact
didn't do nearly
check.
as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas,
I got a fact
groceries,
check.
and housing
Wall's
unaffordable
correct
for
about
American
U.S.
citizens.
reaching new highs on
Raised
production
by
of
a woman
oil and
who would
natural
sometimes
gas.
go into medical debt
We
so
are,
that she could
as a
put
matter of
food
fact,
on the table
producing
in
more
our
natural
household.
gas and
I
more
know
oil
what
than
it's
at any
like
other
to
time in
not be able to
history.
afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask
We're
you
getting a
about
fact
your
check
leadership
again.
qualities.
Oh my God, they're
Governor
on it.
Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year.
That's a big one for
Can you
him.
explain that discrepancy? You have 2 minutes.
Well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out,
Yeah,
I
he's
got
from
my
Nebraska,
degree in the
bro.
summer of '89.
Vote
I
Harris.
traveled to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home.
The queso
and then
lupa.
started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits.
Did he just
And then the
admit that
people
he
of
was
Minnesota
wrong?
were able to elect me to governor twice. So
I've never heard a
my
politician
commitment
do that
has been
before.
from the beginning, to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get
It's
this right.
so
I will
basic
say
here.
more than anything,
Yeah, vote
many
Harris.
times I will
Yeah.
talk a
Go
lot.
native
I will get caught
Nebraskan.
up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about
Dude, I like how
trying to
JD Vance
do
just
the
keeps
best you can for your
swallowing
community,
real
and then
deep
it's putting
because he
yourself
knows
out
that
there and
he's
letting
got
your folks
him.
understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier, or whether
See
it
him?
was being a
Look,
good
like
member
he
of
looks
Congress,
kind of like a
those are the things that
frog.
I think are the
Like he just
values that
keeps
people care
swallowing
about.
real big. You can see his throat
Governor,
move.
just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, I love how they're
Senator
trying to
Vance,
nail
in
him on
2016,
saying
you
that he
called
was
your
there
running mate, Donald
off
Trump,
by a month.
unfit for the nation's highest office, and you
It's like,
said
come
he
on,
could
dude.
be America's Hitler.
Leave the guy
Now
alone.
you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those
come on
comments
that.
and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
God
Well, first of
damn,
all,
what a
Mark,
great
I've
one.
always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages,
Do you have any
rising
pets?
take-home pay,
2
an
cats.
economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure
So
southern border,
yes,
a lot of things,
I do.
frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able
And
to deliver on.
they're
And
they're
yeah,
kind
when
of
you screw
annoying
up, when you
sometimes.
misspeak,
They
when
scream
you get
a
something
lot,
wrong and you change
real
your mind,
loud.
you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American
And sometimes
people
they jump on
where
my
I come
head.
down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump
Walls looks
administration
so
in the first
sad
round
that he has to
if
listen to
Congress
this.
was doing its job. I strongly
It's so
believe, and I've
fucked
been a
up. They're
United
like,
States senator, that
they're like
Congress
trying
is
to
not
like
just a
fucking
high-class
kill the
debating
man
society.
over
It's
like
not just a
being
forum
off by a
for
month,
senators and
35 years
congressmen to
ago.
whine about
Yeah.
problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were
Like,
a
who
lot
Sounds
of
like a
things
typical
on the
yeah, yeah.
border, on tariffs, for example.
Yeah, like the thing
where I
is,
think
he
that we
was
could have
still
done so
there.
much more
He
if
just
the Republican
misreported by a
Congress and the
month. Like
Democrats in Congress
he said,
had
I
been
was
a
there in
little
the
bit
summer when
better
this
about how
happened,
they
and he
governed
was
the
there in
country. They were so
August
successful
instead
at
of
impeaching
July.
Donald
So they're
Trump, they
hammering
couldn't
him.
actually govern.
It's like,
And I
come
want
on,
to talk
dude.
about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and
That's what it
you're
is.
probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs.
No, they don't.
And
It does
it's
the
one
opposite.
issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration. It's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator,
That's
your
not
time
how
is up.
tariffs work, my
Nora?
dude.
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz,
Oh,
after Roe
no.
versus Wade was overturned,
This
you
one's real
signed a
bad for
bill
Vance.
into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation.
Watch
when it
his
comes
throat,
to
dude.
abortion.
Like he
Former
swallows.
President
Watch
Trump
him.
said in the last debate that you believe abortion
JD Vance,
quote,
I mean.
in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women.
So we got a
in charge of
fact
their
check
healthcare.
on the
But
Trump
look,
tax
this
cuts.
is not where, if you
Walls
don't
was
know
correct and
Amanda
Vance was
or
wrong.
Hadley, you soon will.
82.8% of the
Project
benefits from
2025
Trump's
is
tax
gonna have a
policy
registry
went to the
of
top
pregnancies.
1%
It's
on the
going to make it
income
more
spectrum.
difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate
Sounds about right.
access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's point? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know
I mean,
a lot of
you might want to
Americans
talk to
care
your
about
running
it.
mate on
A lot
that
of
one,
Americans
Vance.
don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican
I love
Party
that JD
to be
Vance
pro-family
and Donald
in
Trump
the
made up a lie
fullest
that
sense of
Haitian
the word.
immigrants are
I want us
eating
to
people's
support fertility
pets.
treatments. I
And
want
then
us
the
to make it
moderators
easier
are
for
like
moms
hounding
to
Walls
afford to
over
have
being
babies.
like
I
a
want it to
month
make it
like
easier
off.
for young families to
Yeah.
afford a home so they can afford
So I got a
place
fact
to
check.
raise
This is the
that
first
family.
time
I
that
think there's
Tim
so
Walz
much
was
that we
wrong
can
about
do
something.
on the public policy
He
front
was wrong
just to
about
give
Project
women more
2025
options.
calling for a
Now, of
registry
course,
of
Donald Trump has been
pregnancies.
very clear
This is
that on the
apparently
abortion
not true.
policy
But
specifically,
Project
that we
2025
have
does
a
recommend
big
that states
country and it's
submit more
diverse.
detailed
And
abortion
California has a
reporting to the
different
federal
viewpoint on this
government.
than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona, and the proper way to handle this,
But
as
it does not
messy as
mention nor
democracy
call
sometimes
for a new
is
federal
to
agency
let
that is tasked with
voters
registering
make these
pregnant women.
decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy.
Fact check
And I
on
think
that one.
that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did during
Yes,
when I was running
you
for Senate in
did.
2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the
Tim
federal
Walz
level.
is
I
writing
don't
like
think
he's
anybody's
like,
trying to
yep,
get rid
that's
of that, or at
bullshit.
least I hope not. Though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023.
Well, the fact checkers are going to be
and
all over
people
this
of
one, I'm
Ohio
sure.
voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora,
I
is that
actually
we've
don't
gotta
know
do
if
a
he
better
ever said
job
that
of
or
winning
not.
back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to
Please, with the moderators, have to get him on saying that women without kids should not be allowed to vote.
And we have got to earn
Please.
people's trust back. And that's why
Yeah.
Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing
He can't be
pro-family
allowed to
policies,
just go
making
on, like,
childcare
called
more
out for
accessible,
that.
making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need
Look
to
at him
be
swallowing.
available,
He's like a
and we make
frog.
that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state.
It's really
for the
annoying
best
me.
place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're
See that?
pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the
pro-abortion,
law is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience.
Good.
We can be a big and
Yeah,
diverse
fuck
country
'em.
where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country
There
more
shouldn't be
pro-baby and pro-family.
religion-based
Please.
hospitals.
Yes.
Governor,
So,
please respond.
would
Look,
you
this is
would
one
you
where there's
respect a
always something that-
Muslim
this
like
is a very
hospital's
simple
freedom to do
proposition.
what they want?
Yeah,
These are
like,
women's
what are you
decisions
talking
to make
about, dude?
their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law
What
is
the?
written.
By the way,
to try and
what
make a
the
point, that's
fuck
not
is
the
a
law.
Catholic
Governor,
hospital?
please tell me. What was that all
It'd be
about?
one like there's a bunch in Missouri. It'd be like
I've given this
Saint-
advice on a lot of things that
St.
getting
Jude's
involved,
or
getting
like
engaged, that's been misread, and
Mercy.
it was fact-checked at the
But that's
last
not a
debate.
Catholic
But the point
hospital.
on this is there's
I
a
mean, there's
continuation
definitely
of
ones
these
around
guys
me. Like
to
there's
try
like
and
Like,
get
just
health
because
care
they
and
have
try
that
to get
name
involved.
doesn't mean that
I
they're
use this line on
Catholic.
this, just mind
No,
your own
they.
business
I've been
on
in
this.
them. They are.
Things work
Like,
best
they
when Roe
refuse to
versus
give
Wade
you
was in
condoms
place. When we do
I
our
don't know
or
about
birth
that, but-
control.
best. That doesn't
Because if they
preclude
give you
us
those to you, then they're
from
not a Catholic
increasing
hospital.
funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood education. They get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
I'll be right back. By the way, Tim Walz is whipping his ass.
This PBS News presentation is made possible by
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight,
The PBS NewsHour, your source for news you can trust, asking tough questions.
should Democrats supply their votes if it means avoiding a government shutdown?
Well, right now, it's very much in the hands of the Republicans in Congress to be able to do just that.
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned. Is it time to think about negotiating a settlement?
I'm ready to negotiate now with people who really want peace.
Covering events as they unfold.
How long will Norfolk Southern maintain a presence in East Palestine?
As long as it takes.
All the homes are gone, all the buildings are gutted.
What goes through your mind when you see fire that close to your home?
Oh my God, am I gonna die?
From Capitol Hill.
And even by the standards of this Congress, the drama and the stakes for this week are perilously high.
To around the world.
8 soldiers died in the second deadliest attack on Israeli forces of the war.
What's your message to the Ukrainians who had to live through occupation?
I thank them that they survived through this.
Exploring political divides.
Have you tried to have a conversation with some of the folks who have a different view on these issues?
Oh, yeah. They've been pretty interesting.
Highlighting issues across the country.
You've got larger groups, more people coming across in more remote crossings. What does that mean for your team?
It makes it incredibly difficult for us to respond.
Examining nationwide controversies.
How does this election cycle make you feel in one word?
Nervous.
Focusing on issues that matter.
Studies show that young women are experiencing the highest rate of increase in cancer diagnosis.
Tom's
addressing changes
Tom
to our
BRB.
environment.
As we
I wanted to
expose
talk to
more
you.
shorelines,
That's
we're
exactly why I'm here,
likely
though.
to see more dust.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that's
he'll be back
toxic
like in a
dust
moment.
because
Like,
there is arsenic
it's just
and
because there's a
heavy
break in the
metals
debate.
lake bed.
Committed.
I feel pretty neutral on the two. I feel like neither are really gaining points.
Committed band out there, or the most pretentious and...
Walls looks too nervous.
No, not self-righteous.
And that is the NewsHour.
I mean, he's also a
Tonight,
self-admitted,
I'm Jeff
like,
Bennett.
terrible
Amna
debater.
Nawaz on behalf of the entire
Yeah,
NewsHour team.
he might be.
Thank you
But that doesn't matter. What matters is how it's going to affect voters. Vance just looks a little robotic, but he looks a lot more confident and comfortable. Isn't good luck for Walls. I think in terms of what points they're making, neither of them are particularly messing up or being super strong.
Have you got visual of him? These intruders are walking straight into
I'm gonna go back to watching with my father.
another
okay.
pride.
Be back.
Kill those cops. It looks like there's only 5 cops.
In this historic election,
Vance had this endless ambition to get somewhere. This is a guy who is super competitive.
their influences and ideas,
A pragmatic problem solver who really believes that government can and should help people.
He feels that the world is moving too fast and it's casting away its old rules too fast.
This election just became even more important than it was before.
premieres Tuesday, October 8th, 10, 9 Central, only on PBS.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence.
Oh, good. I'm
You
just in
oppose
time.
red flag gun
You just
laws
missed Gemini.
and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic
You just missed
rifles,
Gemini.
including AR-15s.
Well, why did he
So let me
leave?
ask you, earlier this year,
To go
for
watch
the
it with
first
his,
time,
continue watching with his dad.
of a school shooter were convicted
Oh, well,
of
what did he join
involuntary
for?
manslaughter
To
and
talk to you real
sentenced to
quick
10
about what you
years
thought.
in prison. Do you think holding
what were his
parents
thoughts?
responsible could curb
He didn't say.
mass
He said
shootings?
neither was
I'll
really
give you 2
winning, and then
minutes.
he left.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case,
Oh,
I don't know
man,
for
I
sure details, but
disagree.
I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities.
I definitely think that
So
JD
in
Vance
some
is doing a
cases,
better
the answer's
job
gonna
than
be
Trump,
yes, and in some
though.
cases, the answer is going to be no, and the details really matter here.
Like,
For
dude, Trump
example,
was
if a kid
terrible.
steals a
Yeah,
gun,
a lot of
that's
people
gonna
are
be
saying
different
Walls
than
is
if a
getting
parent
shit on,
hands over a
actually.
gun knowing that their kid is
I
potentially
think
dangerous.
that those
Look,
people
I
are
wanna just sort of
exclusive to
speak
Twitter
as a
and they're
father
crazy.
of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So
this is one of the only issues I agree with conservatives on.
Than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers. Because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer, and I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents. And they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead. And they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that.
All right, come on, dude. Cody, now you're being crazy.
Things that worked. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have
Walz is being too nice. He needs to be more bloodthirsty.
It just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris as an attorney
the problem here is that I think he's just 100%
She knows that it's
correct.
there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking
No, I mean
your guns,
it's
but
an
I
entire
ask all of
debate.
you
Like
out
Walz is
there,
being way too nice.
do you want your schools hardened to look like a
He
fort?
needs to be
This
calling
is what
JD
politics
what we
is
have to go
supposed to
when we
look
know
like.
there's
No,
countries
not
around the
it won't
world
work
that their
with how
children aren't
psychotic the
practicing
Republicans are. He
these
needs to be
types of
calling
drills.
JD Vance a
They're
freak
being
at
killed.
every
We owe it
opportunity.
to them
I
to
hate to
get
tell you
evicted.
this,
These
Cody,
aren't things that
but the
should be
people
that
who
difficult.
respond to that
You
kind
can
of
still
rhetoric
keep your firearms,
are
and
already
we can
voting
make a
for the
difference. We
Republican
have to.
Party
If
no
you're
matter
listening
what
tonight,
the law
this
says.
breaks your heart.
Every single
Tim, first of
fucking
all, I didn't know
debate
your 17-year-old
is
witnessed
not
a
about
shooting.
the
I'm
people
sorry
who
about
are
that.
on the
I appreciate
right
it.
or on the
Christ
left.
have
It
mercy.
is about the
It is
moderates in the
awful.
middle.
And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences.
But like I
between our
said,
own country's
I
gun
think
violence
that
problem and Finland is.
I think
first
that
of all,
JD Vance is doing better than Trump in this debate. Like,
mental health.
Trump
Substance
did
abuse.
horrible.
We have way higher rates of depression.
Like,
way
I
higher
don't,
rates of
I have
anxiety.
not
We
seen
unfortunately have a mental
a
health crisis
presidential
in this country
candidate
that I really do
perform
think that we need to
that
get to
bad
the root
in a
causes of,
debate
because
in
I
a
don't think
really
it's the whole
long
reason
time.
why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where My shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this.
I think this is definitely his weakest part of the debate so far, but I think he's doing quite well.
Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this. This issue of housing.
No, of course it won't, because this is just down payment assistance programs. Those already exist.
That we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that.
I'm getting a leg massage.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with, but the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign.
She can't. There's nothing she could do, you clown.
The American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now,
I
you
swear to
asked,
God,
Margaret,
people
what would
just do not know how the
immediately
government
change the
works.
equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill baby drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for a national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us.
Of the world's
But
fresh
again,
water?
This is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a
I
chance to
think
make
he
money
meant the
here. Let's take
country.
this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up.
Yes,
But
it is,
Senator,
son.
on
This
that
is the
point,
debate.
I'd like for you to clarify. There
How are
are
you
many
doing tonight?
contributing factors to high
Sorry,
housing
I'm laying
costs.
down
The
right
evidence
now
you have
because I'm getting a
migrants
leg
are
massage here.
part of this problem.
So,
there's a Federal
here,
Reserve study
let me
that we're happy
prop
to share
myself
after
up
the
for
debate
you
and put it up on
so I can
social
speak
media,
to you
actually,
all
that really
proper
drills
like.
down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the
Moderated
entire driver of
reply.
higher housing prices.
Eh?
It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration
What do you
that
mean
makes it
moderated
harder
reply?
to
What are you talking
develop
about?
our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing
Wait, is it not letting you
everything
talk?
exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of
I
people
don't know
who
what's going
want
on
to
here. I've
build
never
homes
seen this
that aren't
message
able to
before.
build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walsh.
It's saying
We
you're
should get out of this
restricted, but I
idea
don't know
of
why.
housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving
Moderated
it away
reply.
to
I don't
millions upon
understand.
millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local. Many
I'm
of them are
sorry,
state.
man.
I don't know which
I
ones
want
are federal, but I think
I want
whenever
to
we
talk to you,
regulations, people think they
but
can get rid of them.
Twitch isn't
I
letting
think
me.
You want to be able to get out of your house in a fire.
It seems
I
as
think
though
you wanna
Twitch
make
has
sure that it's
censored you, my
fireproof
man.
and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
I've never seen that before. I don't know. Dude, Twitch has put you in Twitch jail.
You're passionate about the housing crisis. I can tell.
I don't know what you said, but god damn, all it's saying to me when you talk is star moderated reply star.
At the last presidential debate,
I mean, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to turn it off.
Care Act. In response, he said,
So I just saw you say, whoa, that's crazy. And then whatever message you sent immediately after that, it just said moderated reply.
how that would work.
I don't know how to fix this. Are you saying that? Are you saying moderated reply?
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members.
I swear to God, man, this isn't me. I'm a big free speech guy.
Members of my family actually got.
I don't know what's going on right now. I've never seen this happen before.
Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership, and I think.
Let me look it up on my phone. Maybe that's what's going on here.
This concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, you know, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight,
yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm sorry, but
Donald Trump could have.
I'm in the VC. Oh no, so Camo, we this is for this channel right now is for like me and the home dogs talking here. We're just doing coverage right now, but you're welcome to stay in here and watch with us, man. I'm happy to have you here.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Pants. That's it's not letting me
And so what I know is under
it's not letting me
more people are covered than they
see what you're saying. I don't know what to tell you, and I can't find a way to fix it.
Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he
So
did
this is the weird part. I can see some of your messages,
on day one, he tried to
but
sign
not
an executive
others.
order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to
Like, this
repeal
is
the
wild, and I
ACA,
think
but
nobody
lost
else
the
can,
Supreme Court.
like,
And
Camo,
he would have
can you
repealed
see
the
any of My
ACA,
Name is Pants?
not
Can you
been
see
for the
any of
courage
his
John
messages
McCain
in
to
chat?
save that bill. Now, fast
I
forward,
must
what
look
that
like a
means to you
fucking
is
lunatic
you lose your
talking to
pre-existing
to
condition.
ghosts
If you're
right
sitting at
now.
home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your
No,
kids get
Camo
kicked out
can't
when
see
they're
your
26.
messages either, man.
Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first
I mean, I
time
want to help
with
you, but
Medicare.
I don't know what the hell I could do.
Drugs that will come
I
online,
Googled it, and
the
it
most
didn't say
common ones that'll
anything.
be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump
You got me
said
muted. Yeah, I know, Camo. This chat, like when I'm doing commentary like this, we're just trying to watch this. I don't normally let viewers
might be worse than a concept.
chat
Because what
in
he
these
explained is
types of
pre-Obamacare.
streams.
And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time.
Because, you know, it's
What they're
political,
saying is,
and I don't want
if
people to
you're
get too
healthy,
fired up.
Why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies.
But you're
pick who they
feel
insure, because
free
guess what happens?
to say whatever you
pay
want
your
in
premium, it's
chat,
not much,
as long as it
but
doesn't
you're
get
not
you
gonna have
or
it
me
out to you.
banned.
But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why
I
the
don't
system
care
didn't
for
work.
politics. I'm
Kamala
Canadian.
Harris will
Oh yeah, that's
protect
true.
and
You're
enhance
in Canada.
the
What the
ACA.
hell?
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people, whatever, that the system works. And the question about this of young people, whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this.
Why am I hearing an
Republicans
echo?
fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans
Why
should
am I
be
hearing
treated
an
this.
echo?
Well, then
So
what
you think
happens
the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
It unmuted my.
I think the idea of making sure the risk
Oh,
pool is broad enough to cover
God.
it, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking free
Oh.
ACA when we
Wait,
get
what?
people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiate on Medicare for the first time in America.
Thank you. Margaret?
On Medicare for the first
Guys, we're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world
What the
without
fuck
a
is going
national
on,
paid
man?
leave program for new parents. Governor
fuck is
Walz,
going
you
on,
said
man?
that if Democrats win both the White House and
Oh,
Congress,
that's what
this
was
is a day
happening
one
there.
priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company.
Okay, I
We're
figured it
home
out.
in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is,
So what
think
have you
they're
been up to,
moral, and
Camo?
I think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees
You max
healthy.
out everything
We
on
in
Space
Minnesota
Marine yet?
Passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens.
Well, if you get
end up
cancer, you're
staying home.
probably
In
fucked.
some places, that means no paycheck.
hate to say it,
because
Mr.
you've got no
Wolves.
protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand
I
side.
came here to
You
talk
can't
to
expect
you.
the most important people in our
Well,
lives to take either our children
excellent.
or
And
our
welcome
parents
to the
to
chat.
get paid the least amount of
But
money.
what
And
have
we
you
have to make it easier for folks
have you
to be
maxed
able
out
to get
your
into that business and then to
classes
make
in
sure that
Space
folks
Marine
are
yet?
able to pay for that. We were able to do
I'm
it in
curious how the
Minnesota, and I'm still
adventure
telling you
is
this.
going for
We
you.
were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator,
Four
do you
and every
support
weapon
a
except for
national
9 of
paid
them.
leave
Good.
program? And if so,
So which one's
for
next?
how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care
Assault.
of their
Okay,
newborn? You
got
have
you.
2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats too have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who's an incredible
Heavy
mother to our
Bulwark,
3
Vanguard,
beautiful
and
kids, but is
Sniper.
also
Okay.
a very, very brilliant
Damn, dude,
corporate
you're
litigator.
getting it,
And I'm
man.
so proud of her. but being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily
Taking a break
difficult.
today. Yeah,
And it's not just
I got
difficult from
a little
policy perspective.
exhausted.
She
I took
actually
a
had
break too.
access to paid
We've been
family leave because
playing
she worked
other
for a bigger
Warhammer.
company. But the cultural
Cat cut
pressure
your arm.
on young families
Jesus
and especially
Christ.
young women, I
Is
think
it
makes
bad?
it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids.
There is not a
We should
single
have a
fucking
family
woman that
care
wants to
model
go back to
that
work
makes
immediately
choice
after birth.
possible. And I think
Not
this is
one.
a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach.
Cody, did you hear
And look,
this guy?
If you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block
Bad.
Grant, and there's another
Did you
block
go to a
grant
doctor?
program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your
Not that
neighborhood
bad. Okay,
to provide
okay.
childcare in the way that makes
All right,
the
well,
most
at least
sense.
you're
You
not
don't get
dying.
access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver
Oh,
family
rubbing
care and how we
alcohol.
promote
Okay,
childcare.
all right.
Because look, it is unacceptable. And, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden
It's on my
to
bicep,
put on
not deep,
American
just a murder.
families. We're
Okay,
the
all right,
only
good.
country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve
Camel,
says
you're
parents
such a random
will
ass
spend nearly
motherfucker,
as
man.
much on childcare as
I got
they
cut
do
by a
on
cat.
housing
I'm
each month.
tired.
So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking
And
in
then
a
you'll
lot
go to
of money
bed?
by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child
I don't
care
know.
options
I don't
that
know,
are viable
Camo. I
and
don't know.
workable for a lot
I
of
haven't
American
been
families.
playing at all. I know.
Can you
I know. I like
clarify how
murdering
that will
Xenos too. I've just
solve
been
the childcare
there's been
shortage?
some other games that I want
Well,
to play,
because,
especially
as Tim
coming
said,
into the
a
month
lot
of
the childcare
October.
shortages, we
You're going
just
to be
don't
getting a
have
lot of
enough
horror out of
resources
me.
going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to,
It's spook
unfortunately,
month.
look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some
Oh, my
childcare
legs
tax
feel so
credit
good.
proposals. Do you think Congress will agree
Cody,
to
I've had
the
enough of you.
$6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the
Dirtbag.
age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight
wanted to
knows.
do-
I mean, I'm sure they're
nobody's
shocked to
silly.
hear it's not that expensive.
It's nobody.
And
I
let's
got
be
this
clear,
thing.
Whether it's 5,000 or 6,000,
It's
that
I
leaves you
call
about
it my
3 or 4 months.
leggies.
Let's be clear of where we're at.
So
on
they're
this.
like
It's
legs, you
because
put
we
them
got
on,
out of an
and they
imbalance on this.
inflate
We
and
thought we were gonna
deflate
get
on your
by by not
legs to
paying
give
people.
you
I
a
don't think Senator
massage.
Vance or that-
They're
on
called
that
the
part.
Norma
I'm not
Tech.
opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000.
Well, I did that
and
too,
taking less.
actually.
So not only do they not get the
I
money
have
to pay
like
for that, they're
a
$4,000 in
massage
the hole. That's one
bathtub.
school. That's
Like
his
it has
alma
the
mater.
jets in
And
it.
so I think the
So
issue
when I
here is
turn it on,
that
it
those members of
massages my
Congress,
body
I can't
with the
believe
hot
they're not-
water.
When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometimes.
Yeah, sure. I
but
love
they will
rock
lead
climbing.
with childcare, and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more
Maybe
workers
someday for
because
sure.
our economy's growing, but we need more
I
workforce.
boulder.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence
Nice
and
skin.
said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every
I mean,
state
yeah,
in the
thanks.
nation, Republicans and
But the
Democrats,
I mean, if you take a look at my
certified the
hands,
2020
they're pretty
election results
grisly
and sent
at this
a
point. I
legal
do
slate of electors to
powerlifting
Congress before January 6th.
and bouldering,
Senator
so
Vance, you
my
have said
hands
you would
are
not have
a little
certified
stinky.
the
Oh
last
yeah, well, I
presidential
mean, I am
election
only
and have
30,
asked
bro.
the
I
states to
mean,
submit alternative electors.
God,
That
I'm
has
not
been called
grandpa yet.
unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all,
the
I
battery
think we're focused on the
died.
future. We need to figure out how to solve
Son
the
of a
inflation crisis
bitch.
caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on
Yeah,
January
sure, you
6th,
can
the
call me
protesters
Godly
all
Locks. I'm
protest
cool with
peacefully.
that,
And
Camo.
on January
God,
the 20th,
you're
what happened?
you're buttering
Joe
me
Biden
up,
became
bro.
the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the
Camo.
Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this
I mean,
country. but
I do
unfortunately, it's
take
not the threat to
excessively
democracy that
good
Kamala
care of my
Harris
skin.
and Tim Walz want to
So,
talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans
I'm happy to hear this.
casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's
No, that's
Kamala
quite
Harris
literally
saying
what your
that
party
rather
has
than
done
debate and persuade her
systematically,
fellow
Mr.
Americans,
Vance.
she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue.
You really just called him
But we're
Bobby
united
Kennedy? Come on,
behind a
brother.
basic American First Amendment principle that we
You
ought to
ain't
debate
friends,
our
bro.
differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy.
Oh,
than
I got
what
a
Donald
fact
Trump
check.
said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest
This is
on
about
January the 6th.
Vance saying that he never supported a national
Well, I've
ban.
enjoyed tonight's debate. I think there
He
was a lot of
supported a
commonality, and
national
I'm
ban in a
sympathetic to the
2022
speaking on things, and
interview.
I think I might have
Yep,
with,
he sure
with the
did.
senator, but
Me
He
too.
there's
said,
one-
quote,
there's
I
one,
certainly
though, that
would
this
like
one is
abortion
troubling
to
me, and
be
I say that
illegal
because I think we need to
nationally.
tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge
And then he
that the
said,
fact is
we
that I
can't
don't
give
think
in
you
to
can
the
leave a frog in
idea
the
that the
pot and let
federal
boiling
Congress
water go
has
up.
no
He
role
was
in this
very
matter.
clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich
When you get
for
Botox,
Democratic leaders
never.
to say that Donald Trump is a unique
I
threat
don't
to
do the
democracy
Botox.
when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to
The
shake
guy
hands
on the
after this
right
debate
can
and after this
shake my
election. And of course,
leg.
I hope that we win.
What
and
does
I think we're
that
gonna win,
mean?
but if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my
Is that a
prayers,
good
he'll have
thing?
my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he
This
wants it.
sounds like a
But we have to
Canadian
remember
thing.
that for years in this
You
country,
can shake your
Democrats
leg.
protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen.
Oh,
by
you're
Vladimir
cock.
Putin
I
because the
see.
Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
I
And
have
if we
never
wanna
heard
say
that.
we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
You like Tim Walz a
January
little
6th was
too
not
much,
Facebook
Camo.
ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point, but the issue was that happened. Donald Trump
Oh, it's a
didn't do it, and
hate
all
thing.
of a sudden,
Oh,
there's no
okay.
place for this. It has.
I mean, I like the guy on the
massive
right much
repercussions.
more. He's
This
my
idea
man's.
that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something. That's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and
Yeah, it's really
I'm
interesting when
thank
Republicans
Senator
bring
Vance.
up
I think this is the conversation they want to hear.
when Republicans
And I
bring
think there's a
up
lot of agreement. This is one that we
censorship,
are
when they
miles apart
actively
on.
pursue book
This was a
bannings.
threat to our democracy in a way
It's
that
really
we had
bizarre.
not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask,
Denominate.
did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is
Has she tried to-
that is a damning non-answer.
Has she? It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy.
Oh,
The most
dementia.
sacred right under
What do
the
you
United States
mean?
democracy
He's about
is
as
the
sharp
First
as they
Amendment.
get. What are you
You
talking
yourself
about?
have said
You're
there's
crazy,
no First
Camo.
Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking
He's
their
like
minds.
Joe
That is a
Biden.
threat to democracy that will long outlive this
Man,
present
stay in
political moment.
Canada.
I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade
Bro
one another.
wants a
Let's argue about
kiss.
ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers should.
Oh, I know, Camo. That's why I'm not. I'm not trying to get into an argument with you, bro. I'm laughing.
Criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every
How's it
American.
going?
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
They're actually acting like two real human beings. It's kind of bizarre.
Well, that's just because JD Vance is a freakish snake and he's lying about every single thing.
Yeah, but he's acting normal.
This is not
Yeah,
a
just
debate. It's
yeah,
not,
which is
Like,
like,
it's
but
not
the thing
anything
is, it's
anywhere
important that he
other
acts
than in
normal.
Donald Trump's world.
It
Because
matters.
look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on
Because
the
they're
stage. What I'm
Camo.
concerned about is
They aren't
where is the
viewers.
firewall with Donald Trump.
okay, I'm glad
Where
fucking
is
Wall
the
said that.
firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that. Because of course that's
Nice
what we
try,
would
mix.
do.
Yeah,
So America, I
it's
think we've
almost
got a
gone
really
though. All the
clear
good
choice on
stuff
this
has been
election
eaten out of it.
Who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump?
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS
I just
News
eat whatever I
vice
hand pulls out.
presidential
Me too,
debate
Camo.
continues.
But there's different amounts of the good stuff in there, you know? And I already ate all the good stuff. So now it's actually just regular peanuts. And that's it.
Peanuts.
Because, like, the bag was like
PBS News presentation is
60%
made possible
peanut.
by
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide
But yeah,
coverage
to
with no contract.
to answer your question, Mark, they have both been surprisingly normal,
And by the Corporation for
surprisingly
Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to
very
your PBS station from
civil.
viewers like you.
They are both
Thank
acting
you.
with high levels of
Asking
decorum,
tough questions
and they
to those in
are
power.
Should
respectful of
Democrats
each other.
supply their votes
It's
if
weird.
it means avoiding a government shutdown?
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned. Is it time to think about a settlement?
And covering events as they unfold.
8 soldiers died in the second deadliest attack on Israeli forces of the war.
To see so many deaths in one place, it's not humanity.
PBS NewsHour and PBS News Weekend, every night on PBS and streaming.
He shows us something between what you see and what you don't see. This
He
is the
could
story
not wait for
of the
napkins.
most curious man in history.
The influence of Leonardo's vision was enormous.
He's doing things no one had ever done before. And that is simply astounding.
That is beautiful.
So much anticipation. Oh, it's beating. This is a breakthrough moment, and it won't be the last.
The lionesses, they have to be very careful here.
What we've learned about weather on other planets has rewritten what was possible.
In many ways, the Assyrians are the beginning of the
So, Mark, my next major purchase is a sauna.
All right.
Yes. What the fuck am I watching right now? This is not the vice presidential debate in any capacity.
You were my #1 suspect. Glad to hear it.
You think you know a little more than you're telling us?
Just build up the tension even more.
If you insist.
What I've got to do is going to tear me apart.
You helped us get to the truth.
Whatever happened here, it wasn't what we think.
Oh yeah, the leggies.
Hidden threat, betrayal.
Dude, Mark, did you look at that new set of leggies I sent you? The new ones?
I have no idea.
I linked it to you earlier today. You would know, like it's very obvious that they're leggies. Knee-high leggings? Nah, brother. These are hip-high. Hip-high leggings.
To discover where creator and creation
Jesus Christ, that tag price tag.
open a little window into
That's about how much That's about how much my leggies cost. My like the total package for mine actually costs more than that.
Damn.
We report
But
the
those ones,
facts.
dude, they're wireless.
We find clarity. PBS is here, delivering the credible.
Like you just slip them on your feet and press the button in the app, and it just does it. You don't have to like hook them up to hoses or anything.
PBS, your
Honestly,
trusted
worth the
election
price.
source.
Facts.
Honestly, worth every penny.
Yeah, the only problem is that with that one, I can't put ones like on my arm and stuff. Like it's less versatile.
Closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So Governor Walz,
There's no
you
arm
are
version?
first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank
There's
you,
a what?
Senator Vance.
There's no
thank you
arm
to CBS
version.
News, and most importantly,
Yeah, I know. I have
thank you to all
arms
of
for
you. If
mine.
you're still up, and the folks who missed
And you
Dancing
can
with
get
the
hips
Stars, I
for
appreciate
mine,
it.
too.
But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And
All
I'm
your
as
important
surprised as
stuff is
anybody
gone.
Of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built.
My man's a
From
criminal.
Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney
Oh, hold
to
on.
Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by.
Oh,
but to
I
get
know,
ahead.
Camo. Don't
And
worry.
the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me.
Camo, you're killing me, man.
Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president,
You're having fun. No, it's not. I'm bouncing, brother.
Country where every American,
I swear, Twitch
rich or
moderators,
poor,
I'm
ought to be
just
able to
bouncing.
turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night.
I swear.
That's gotten more difficult.
It's actually not
thanks
even
to
my
Kamala
hand that's
Harris's
bouncing,
energy
it's my
policies.
leg.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala
It's my
Harris's
femboy
policies.
workout.
I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford
It
to
looks
buy
like
a
a
house.
jacket.
You ought to be
I'm
able
sure
to
it
live
looks
in
that
safe
way
neighborhoods.
often.
You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl, and that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to
Where's your
work on all
makeup?
these challenges I
It's
just
right
listed.
here.
She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was
Call it a beard.
1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in
I think
the
they both
only
did
vice
well.
presidential
I'm not
debate
ignoring
of
you, Camo. I'm
election
just
cycle.
listening to closing
I'm Margaret
statements.
Brennan.
And I think this is a massive waste by the Democrats. I think they flubbed it.
Please get
Not
out
at
and
all.
vote. And for all of us here at CBS
Like, this won't,
News,
like, turn
thank
any,
you
like-
and good night.
Undecided. If anything, I feel like JD Vance probably won over
JD
more of the
Vance and
undecided
Tim
vote
Walz
than
facing
Walz
off
did.
in the
I
first
doubt
and
it,
only
to
vice
be honest with
presidential
you.
debate of
I mean, we won't be able to
election
see for
season.
at least
They're
2
joined
weeks.
by their respective
but
spouses. They
we'll see.
sparred over abortion, immigration, threats to democracy, but often found points of agreement. Let's bring in our panel. We have Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, Republican strategist Kevin Madden,
All right.
Democratic strategist Amisha
We're done here.
Cross, and our reporters.
I'm not listening to this tomfoolery. It's crazy how I just don't give a fuck what the pundits' opinions are anymore at this point in my life. Oh. Alright. This is going to be the end of the stream for the night. So, have a nice night. Remember, I love each and every single one of you. And I hope that you have a fantastic evening. And of course, I'll see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think we're going to play the next chapter of Fears to Fathom. So, have a nice night, big dogs. And yes, Camo, you